All units, we have confirmation the hiker is responding. Repeat, subject is responding to calls. Ground team, do you have visual?
Negative, no visual. But we can hear her. She's answering from 3 different directions.
The transmission ended at 2:47 a.m. When dawn broke 4 hours later, they found her coat. Just her coat. Folded neatly on a rock she'd already passed during the initial search. Welcome to the faint whisper. Where missing person files don't end, they echo.
Tonight, questions remain after 3 separate search operations in national wilderness areas yielded what officials are calling inconsistent results.
Case 1. It started as the kind of search and rescue call teams train for. Straightforward. A day hiker named Marcus Holloway, age 32, missed his check-in time at Crestwood Valley Trail in Oregon. His car was still in the lot. His phone went to voicemail. His girlfriend called it in at 7 p.m. By 8:30, a 6-person SAR team was on the trail. The lead coordinator, a woman named Diane Trask, had been doing this for 19 years. She'd pulled people out of snowdrifts, ravines, bear encounters. This one felt routine. Cold night coming in, inexperienced hiker, probably twisted an ankle and couldn't walk out. They started calling his name around 9:15, and Marcus answered. His voice came from somewhere east of the main trail, faint but clear. He was calling back, saying he was okay, saying he could see their lights. Diane's team moved toward the voice. Marcus kept responding, kept saying he was close, that he could see them, but they couldn't see him. For 40 minutes, this continued. Marcus's voice led them deeper into a section of forest the trail didn't cover. Dense canopy, no moonlight. Their flashlights barely cut 15 feet ahead. And then one of the SAR volunteers, a younger guy named Eric, stopped walking. "He's behind us now," Eric said. The whole group went silent, listened. Marcus's voice was coming from the direction they'd just come from. Same tone, same words, still saying he could see their lights. Diane made the call to regroup. They turned back toward the trail. As they did, Marcus's voice moved again. Now it was off to the south, then north, then directly ahead of them, so close it sounded like he was 10 feet away. But there was no one there. At 11:40 p.m., Diane radioed base and requested they shut down for the night. Unsafe conditions. They'd resume at first light. When the sun came up, they found Marcus Holloway sitting on a log less than 30 yards from where the search had started. He was facing the trail. His hands were in his lap. His eyes were open. He wasn't breathing. The medical examiner determined he'd been dead for at least 8 hours. Cause of death? Hypothermia. But his body wasn't cold yet. His skin still had warmth. And there was something else. His boots were clean. No mud, no debris. The ground around that log was soft dirt, wet from recent rain, but there were no footprints leading to where he sat. Not his, not anyone's. Diane Trask retired 5 months later. In her exit interview with the forestry department, she said she couldn't explain what happened that night. She said Marcus's voice had been so clear, so present, that she believed he was walking parallel to them the entire time. She said it sounded like he wanted to be found, but when they asked her if she thought it was really him calling out, she didn't answer. The case file was marked closed. Cause of death, environmental exposure. The recording of the radio transmissions from that night was archived. It's still in the county records office. If you request it, you can hear Marcus Holloway's voice responding to the search team over and over, even after the timestamp that matches his estimated time of death. Case 2. Zoe Mackenzie disappeared during an overnight camping trip in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. She was with 2 friends, both experienced hikers. They'd set up camp near a clearing called Widow's Ledge, a spot known for good sunrise views. Zoe went to filter water from a stream about 100 yards downhill. That was at 10:20 p.m. Her friend saw her headlamp bobbing through the trees. She never came back. By midnight, they'd called search and rescue. By 1 a.m., a team was on site. The first odd thing they noticed: Zoe's footprints. Her tracks led down to the stream, clear as day in the soft mud. Boot treads, her exact size, but there were no tracks leading back up. The SAR team followed the prints down to the water. They stopped at the edge. Just stopped. No sign she'd crossed. No sign she'd turned around. The prints ended as if she'd simply stepped into the stream and dissolved. But the water was only 8 inches deep. They searched the area for 3 hours. Then, at 4:18 a.m., one of Zoe's friends shouted from back at the campsite. Zoe was there. She was standing just outside the tent, facing away from them, completely still. Her friends ran to her, calling her name. She didn't turn around, didn't respond. When they reached her and touched her shoulder, she finally moved. She turned slowly, looked at them, and asked, very calmly, "Why did you leave me down there?" Her friends said she wasn't making sense. They told her she'd been gone for hours, that they'd been searching. Zoe shook her head. She said they'd walked away from her at the stream, that she'd been calling for them, but they wouldn't stop. She said she followed them back up the trail, but every time she got close, they moved farther away. She said it felt like walking the wrong direction on a treadmill. The SAR team checked her over. No injuries, no signs of distress, but her boots were dry, completely dry, even though her tracks at the stream had been fresh and wet. And when they asked her to show them where she'd been, she walked them back down to the stream. But this time, she stopped about 20 feet short. She wouldn't go any closer. She said the water looked different now. When they asked what she meant, she said it was flowing the wrong way. One of the SAR volunteers, a guy named Matt, checked. The stream was flowing downhill like it always had. Gravity, basic geography. He told Zoe that. She didn't argue. She just stared at the water and said, "It wasn't before." The search was called off. Zoe was evaluated by a medic, cleared, and her group packed up and left that morning. But 2 weeks later, Matt went back to Widow's Ledge. He didn't tell anyone. He just wanted to see the stream again. He brought a GoPro. When he reviewed the footage later, he saw something he couldn't explain. In one of the shots, panning across the stream, there's a figure standing on the opposite bank, partially obscured by trees, watching. It's only visible for about 4 seconds. The figure doesn't move, doesn't react to the light. It's wearing a jacket that looks exactly like Zoe's. Matt checked the metadata. The timestamp on that video was 3:52 p.m., middle of the day. He was alone. He never went back. Zoe McKenzie hasn't spoken publicly about what happened, but her friend said she won't go hiking anymore. She won't even go near trails. When they asked her why, she said she doesn't trust her own footprints. Case 3. In 2019, a group of 11 people went on a guided overnight trek through the Superstition Mountains in Arizona. The guide's name was Colin Rust, experienced, certified. He'd run this route dozens of times. The plan was simple: hike in, camp near a formation called Skull Mesa, hike out the next morning. Everything went fine until the head count at base camp. Colin counted 12 people. He recounted, still 12. He'd started with 11 clients. He was number 12. But now there were 13. At first, he thought someone had made a mistake. Maybe one of the clients had brought a partner who hadn't registered. He went around the camp asking. Everyone accounted for themselves. No one had brought anyone extra. Colin did the count again, 13. He gathered everyone into the center of camp, in the light, told them to stand in a line. He walked down the row, matching each face to his registration list. All 11 clients were there, exactly who he'd started with. But there were 12 people in the line. One of the clients, a woman named Alexis Tran, asked the obvious question: "Who's the extra person?" No one answered, because no one looked unfamiliar. Everyone in that line believed they belonged there. Colin tried a different approach. He asked people to pair up with someone they'd been hiking near. Accountability partners. The group shuffled around, paired off. One person was left standing alone. A man, mid-40s, wearing a gray jacket and a baseball cap. He looked completely ordinary. He wasn't acting strange. He was just there. Alexis said she remembered him from the start of the hike. Another client said he'd spoken to him during a water break. Someone else said they'd walked behind him for over an hour. Colin asked the man his name. The man smiled, said, "You already checked me in." Colin checked his list again. No one matched the man's description. That's when things shifted. The man's smile didn't fade, but he started walking backward, away from the group, slowly, maintaining eye contact. Colin shouted at him to stop. The man didn't stop. He kept walking backward into the dark, past the edge of the camp's light, and then he was gone. 2 people went after him with flashlights. They found nothing. No footprints, no trace. The group spent the rest of the night inside their tents. No one slept. At sunrise, Colin packed everyone up and led them back down the mountain. Fast. He didn't stop for breaks. When they reached the trailhead, he did one final count. 12 people. One of the clients was missing. A man named David Ortega. He'd been registered. He checked in at the start. Colin remembered him clearly. But now, no one else did. Alexis said she didn't remember anyone named David. Neither did anyone else. When Colin showed them the registration form with David's signature, they looked at it like it was a stranger's handwriting. Colin called the ranger station, gave them David Ortega's information. They searched the trail. They searched Skull Mesa. They never found him. And there's no record he was ever reported missing. No family came forward. No missing person report exists. The only proof David Ortega was ever on that hike is Colin Rust's registration sheet and a single photo taken at the trailhead. In the photo, you can see 12 people gathered near the sign. One of them has their face turned away from the camera. Colin doesn't guide anymore. Case 4. This one comes from the Adirondacks in New York. Winter search. February. A cross-country skier named Lena Voss went missing during a solo expedition. She was experienced. She had a GPS beacon. She'd filed her route with the Park Service. When she didn't return, SAR went out. They tracked her beacon signal to a frozen lake called Pinewood Basin. The signal was strong, stationary. It placed her right in the middle of the ice. The team approached carefully. The ice was thick, safe. But Lena wasn't there. Her skis were, her poles, her pack, all arranged neatly like she'd stopped for a break. But no Lena. Her GPS beacon was still transmitting. It was clipped to her pack. The SAR team started calling her name. Standard procedure. Voices carry well over frozen lakes. And Lena answered. Her voice came from the far side of the lake, faint but unmistakable. She was calling back. She sounded calm. The team moved toward the voice. As they got closer, it moved farther away, always just out of reach. This went on for 20 minutes. Then, one of the SAR members, a woman named Brooke, stopped and really listened. She said Lena's voice wasn't coming from across the lake. It was coming from under the ice. The whole team went silent, listened. Lena's voice was echoing up from below, calling back to them. Same words, same tone, like she was trapped beneath the surface. But the ice was 14 inches thick, no cracks, no holes, no way she could have gone through. Brooke radioed for ice drills. They brought out equipment, drilled down, found nothing but water, no body, no sign of entry. The search went on for 3 days. Divers checked the lake, sonar scans, underwater cameras, nothing. Lena Voss was never found, but her voice was heard again. A hiker reported it the following winter, said they heard someone calling for help from the middle of Pinewood Basin. When they went to check, there was no one there, just skis, poles, and a pack. Different skis, different pack, a different missing person. The Park Service closed Pinewood Basin to winter recreation, officially due to unsafe ice conditions. Unofficially, they don't want anyone else stopping in the middle of that lake. The last case is from Washington State, Olympic National Forest, 2021. A group of 6 people went on a 2-day backpacking trip. Experienced group. They had permits. They had communication devices. Everything by the book. On the second day, they missed their checkout time. Rangers went looking. They found the group at their last known campsite, all 6 of them, alive, unharmed. But they'd been sitting there for 9 hours. When the Rangers approached, none of them reacted. They were just sitting around a dead campfire, staring at the trees. One of the Rangers, a guy named Peter, called out to them, asked if they were okay. One of the hikers, a woman named Simone, turned her head slowly and said, "We're waiting." Peter asked what they were waiting for. Simone said, "For the rest of us to come back." The Rangers didn't understand. They did a head count. 6 people, the whole group. But Simone insisted 2 people were missing. She said they'd gone to get water that morning and hadn't returned. Peter checked the group's registration. 6 people total. Everyone was accounted for. The other hikers backed Simone up. They all said the same thing. 2 members of their group had gone to the creek and never came back. But when the Rangers asked for names, no one could agree. One hiker said it was the couple. Another said it was the brothers. Another said it was the guide and the kid. None of those people existed. The Rangers tried to calm them down, suggested they were disoriented. Dehydration, maybe. Exhaustion. But the hikers weren't distressed. They were calm, patient. They said they'd wait as long as it took. Peter made the call to evacuate them. The hikers didn't resist, but they kept looking back at the campsite as they were led away, like they were expecting someone to appear. At the hospital, all 6 were evaluated, physically fine. Mentally, the doctor said they were experiencing a shared delusion, folie à plusieurs, a rare condition where a group adopts the same false belief. But here's the thing. When investigators reviewed the group's photos from the trip, there were 8 people in some of the pictures. Not 6, 8. 2 extra faces, blurred, always in the background, always out of focus. The hikers were shown the photos. They didn't recognize the extra people, but they said, very calmly, "That's them. That's who we were waiting for." The photos were sent to a digital forensics lab. No evidence of tampering, no Photoshop, no corruption. The Forest Service has no explanation. The 6 hikers all left the hospital within 48 hours. They've never spoken publicly about what happened. But one of them, a man named Eric Hollis, posted something online a year later. Just a single sentence on a hiking forum. He said, "If you're on a trail and you count your group and the number is wrong, don't count again." At the hospital, all 6 were evaluated, physically fine. Mentally, the doctor said they were experiencing a shared delusion, folie à plusieurs, a rare condition where a group adopts the same false belief. But here's the thing. When investigators reviewed the group's photos from the trip, there were 8 people in some of the pictures. Not 6, 8. 2 extra faces, blurred, always in the background, always out of focus. The hikers were shown the photos. They didn't recognize the extra people, but they said, very calmly, "That's them. That's who we were waiting for." The photos were sent to a digital forensics lab. No evidence of tampering, no Photoshop, no corruption. The Forest Service has no explanation. The 6 hikers all left the hospital within 48 hours. They've never spoken publicly about what happened. But one of them, a man named Eric Hollis, posted something online a year later. Just a single sentence on a hiking forum. He said, "If you're on a trail and you count your group and the number is wrong, don't count again." 5 cases, 5 searches, 5 outcomes that don't fit the narrative of a simple rescue. There's a pattern here, something consistent. In every case, the missing person or the search itself became uncertain. Voices that shouldn't exist, footprints that lead nowhere, people who were there and then weren't, groups that grew and shrank. It's as if the wilderness doesn't just hide people. It reshapes them, displaces them, offers them back wrong. Search and rescue teams are trained for injury, for panic, for the expected dangers of the outdoors. But they're not trained for this. For the hiker who answers from 3 directions. For the victim who's been dead for hours, but whose body is still warm. For the extra person who was always there and never was. The files are marked closed, causes of death listed, survivors discharged. But the recordings remain, the photos remain. And somewhere in the back of the archives, there are reports that never made it into the official files. Notes scribbled by SAR coordinators. Things they heard, things they saw, things they won't talk about. Because if you spend enough time searching the woods at night, calling into the dark, waiting for a voice to call back, eventually something does. And it sounds exactly like the person you're looking for. If you've ever been on a night search, if you've ever been lost on a trail and heard your own voice echoing back, don't assume it's just the wind. And if you're ever part of a group in the wilderness and someone suggests a head count, make sure you all agree on the number before you start. This is the faint whisper. Some case files don't close, they wait. If you have a story, if you've experienced something that doesn't fit the official report, you know where to find us. Stay safe out there, or better yet, stay found.